Hi, and welcome to another edition of Coffee with Polio Experts. Today we're here with Chris Maher, who is managing polio eradication in the Eastern Mediterranean region for the World Health Organization. Chris, thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure, Oliver.
We thought we would take the opportunity of you being here to talk a little bit about polio in Pakistan. Can you give us an update of the current situation of polio in the country?
Yeah, I mean, in 2016, we've had a pretty good year for polio overall in Pakistan, and it's very difficult to separate what's happening in Pakistan from what's happening in Afghanistan. Between the two countries this year, we've got 33 cases now, 20 in Pakistan, 13 in Afghanistan. That's less than half, about 40% of the number of cases we had in 2015, which was also a very good year. So bit by bit, things are improving in both countries. Still too many cases for comfort, but a good year in general, and particularly towards the end of the year, case numbers tapering off nicely.
That sounds encouraging. What is different in the country now in terms of polio eradication than, say, 2 or 3 years ago when Pakistan encountered?
Well, 2 or 3 years ago, we struck a serious problem, right? The program was doing pretty well up until 2012. 2012 was a year that where things went off the rails a bit in Pakistan. That was when we began to have serious issues of violence against vaccinators. That was a part of the general political instability in Pakistan at the time, but there was a specific period, or a period, most of 2012 in fact, when vaccinators were being targeted in different parts of the country and effectively murdered. And this really caused a huge amount of confusion in the program. It coincided with a national election, change in government, change in oversight processes in the country. So it led basically to a loss of momentum, which we had to regain through 2013, 14, 15. And now I think the political momentum is very good and the program momentum is very good. We don't seem to have any vaccination teams being targeted or killed anymore. Security is much less of an issue, although not totally gone than it was. So that basically has been a turnaround period.
In fact, you addressed it, some of the security issues in the country. Some people question, can polio be eradicated in such insecure environments? How big of an issue is it? And are some reports that one sometimes reads in media that certain religious leaders are opposed against polio vaccination true, or do you have the support of religious leaders in the country?
I think that security issues are now more significant in Afghanistan than they are in Pakistan. I think the bulk of Pakistan, the security concerns, the problems that were hampering the delivery of vaccination have largely resolved, and that's partly been because the security situation in general has improved in Pakistan, but also because we've taken different strategic approaches, and there's been a much heavier emphasis now. WHO, UNICEF, the government partners in country have established a process in the highest risk areas of what's called community-based vaccination, where we're really concentrating on making sure we're recruiting of vaccinators from each specific community. And this greatly improves security because, of course, if you're from the community and you get murdered, there tend to be consequences. You have family, you have community ties, etc. So, exerting violence on people from within the same community is significantly more difficult than doing it to foreigners. So that's been a big change. So I don't believe that security per se is an absolute limiting factor to eradicating polio in Pakistan or in Afghanistan for that matter. It makes things a lot more difficult, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't do it. It's not the only situation in which we have faced these sorts of difficulties. So the other point about opposition to immunisation, overt opposition to immunisation is at very, very low levels in both countries. That's not to say that it's disappeared entirely, because it hasn't. But the public stances by senior community figures or religious figures or whatever against vaccination have essentially disappeared. That's not really something that can derail the national programs.
Would you say then that Pakistan is on the right track to eradicate polio? And if so, what needs to happen for that to achieve success finally in the country?
I mean, from my perspective, very much on the right track. I think they've been establishing and following strategies now for the past 3 years that are addressing a lot of the problems that confronted them over that period of time. I mean, and very in very effective ways. So the community-based strategy is one. I mean, that's now pretty much across all the reservoir areas that strategy is being implemented. Transit strategies aiming to reach the extremely mobile populations in Pakistan, which are now well established, trying to map nomadic, highly mobile, high-risk populations. That's not perfect yet, but certainly a lot further ahead than it was 2 or 3 years ago. There's a very strong management process that happens at national level with the government in the driving seat, WHO, UNICEF, BMGF, CDC, other partners involved in a national emergency operations centre where collective decisions are made. So the whole process to me is just much tighter, much better managed, much more strategic, and it leads to a much better implementation in the field and much better monitoring of that implementation.
And it sounds like underlying all this is an extremely high level of government support from across all levels.
You know, everything is within its context. Pakistan is not a country where if someone snaps their fingers, everything suddenly happens. I mean, there are certainly governance issues, and governments at national level and provincial level recognise that very well. There are plenty of governance issues. There are plenty of difficulties in ensuring that people who are supposed to do things actually do them and are held accountable for them at different levels. There are plenty of actual physical difficulties in doing that anyway because of the state of the infrastructure of the country and particularly in some of the highest risk areas. But within the context that Pakistan is in, I don't think we could ask for a higher level of government commitment than we have now. We really have the full administration of the country involved in eradicating polio. Chief secretaries of the provinces, you know, the most senior administrative position in the government, these guys all know about polio eradication. They're all very much up to date on what's going on. They know how many cases there are, where they are in their province, and what the issues are. So I don't think you can ask for very much more than that.
This has been very informative about Pakistan. Maybe to finish off, one last question. A lot of people say, why do we need to keep eradicating polio, always polio eradication? Why not focus on something else? And what are we, together with our partners, Rotary, UNICEF, what would we say to respond to that?
I think, you know, once you start off on a process like this, eradication is an all or nothing. It's you either achieve it or you don't achieve it. And given that, you know, most of the people now involved in polio eradication were not involved necessarily as individuals at the start point when we first had the push from Rotary International and then it turned into a World Health Assembly resolution, etc. That's quite some time ago now. But once you're on that roll, then you pretty much have got to see it through all the way to the end. And the consequences of failure, you know, have the direct consequences, which are with polio-related consequences. And I think many of the people listening to us will know about estimates of 200,000 cases within 10 years, etc., etc. Whatever the numbers, I've seen a lot of polio in my life, and I can state unequivocally there will be a lot of polio within 10 years because immunisation programs will fall off. There will be no more campaigns. Countries will not be concentrating heavily on maintaining the gains that we've made so far, and we will see serious polio disease problems. But I think there's a second set of impacts, and they will be impacts on collective programs in public health, because this is probably the highest profile collective program in public health since smallpox eradication, certainly. And success or failure of these programs kind of determines whether or not countries, individuals and agencies decide to get involved in them in the future. So if we fail, we run the risk that we are, adversely influencing future attempts to have large-scale public sector, multi-country programs in public health.
Absolutely critical to finish the job from any angle you look at it, of course, from a humanitarian most of all. Chris, this has been great. Thank you so much. You and your team are doing amazing work, and we wish you all the best of luck. And here's to a Polio Pakistan very, very soon.
Thank you, Oliver, and thank you for the coffee.
Thank you. Thank you.